everyone, this is AlphaFeed episode 1. I'm your host Rai, and with me are my co-hosts Chad.
Hello there.
Tim.
How's it going?
And Phil.
What's up, everybody?
On this episode, we are talking about the game Onikira Demon Killer, which is being developed by Digital Furnace, based in Ireland. Onikira is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up fantasy game. The player takes on the role of a samurai to prevent the forces of the Japanese underworld from breaking through into the world of the living. Now, the game is in early access on Steam at the moment, and it will be in alpha till the end of May. Though they are still working on the game, some of the things are pretty much decided, like the core mechanics, the enemies so far, and the weapons are set. Also, the levels and narrative are in their final stages. So they are pretty much refining and tweaking everything until the whole game is polished. Some of the things they are working on at the moment are finishing the last levels and creating new enemy types. It's mainly adding more enemies, a few bosses, and extra moves for the main character. But they are also keeping an eye on the Steam forums for feedback. Most of them are bug fixes, but also features they could implement after the release. They actually plan to have a super attack on each weapon, using a separate energy bar, but they went with a different system. Instead, it's now called Bushido Focus, and this allows the player to slow the time and do a lot more damage to its opponents while they are in slow motion. So guys, we are pretty much updated on their status so far, but how are we thinking about the overall concept of the game?
I think the concept's a good idea at its premise. It's essentially 2D Devil May Cry, which by itself is a good idea. It's been tried before, but it's never been completely mastered, and it's good to see developers trying to try this idea further when they have a love for the concept and for the genre.
Okay, so would you say this feels like fresh to you at the moment? Like a fresh new concept?
I mean, I think
go ahead, Chad. Go ahead.
I think I sort of got a Ninja Gaiden vibe. The newer reboot of Ninja Gaiden really feels a lot like this, where you hold down different buttons to use modifiers, to use different weapons and attacks. I do like that style of combat. I think doing it in 2D could be really, really fun, but we'll kind of get into some of the things that this game does right and some of the things it does wrong. We have some complaints when it comes to the combat system, the mechanics and such.
But in the overall concept, like the character you're playing and the goal and...
Right. I mean, so I don't know if you guys have played Mark of the Ninja, but this game kind of reminds me of that, and Mark of the Ninja doesn't have a lot of all-out combat. It's more sneaking around and assassinating people, which is a lot of fun. But this is sort of the melee combat take on Mark of the Ninja in a way. It's sort of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I haven't actually played that game, but I have to agree that it feels like I have played it before, but it's nice as well. It's not, it does work. So
the artists who made the art are Tom Moore and Tom Matthews. And what do you guys think about the art and, let's say, the character designs?
The character designs are actually really detailed. If you look at the main character, there's on one of the loading screens, you actually see a pretty big model of the character. And I think it's actually the same model that you're actually playing with during gameplay. All the enemies and stuff are actually quite detailed. It's just that the camera stays zoomed out so much of the time that you can't really see all that detail, which is really a shame, because I think the character art is actually really well done. The enemies are mostly variations on samurai, corrupted samurai. There are some floating demon heads, Oni heads, flying around too. There's a pretty limited number of enemy types, but they do look pretty good. I guess one complaint I have is just that they're mostly just colored dark. They're mostly just black and white for the most part, primarily, so it can be hard to tell them apart. They all have unique models, so you can kind of like, by their outline, by their silhouettes, you can sort of tell them apart, but there's not a lot of color that makes them stand out. So I kind of wish that there were maybe a little bit more emphasis on the color to kind of differentiate the enemies. But so I think the character models look really good. The levels are a mixed bag for me. I think that they have some good lighting effects. There's a level that has kind of a sunset in the background, and light kind of filters through the ruined village, and it actually looks pretty cool. One of the levels has the moon up in the sky shining down, and it actually looks pretty neat. That stuff looks really good. The effects and lighting actually look pretty decent for the most part. I just feel like the various elements of the levels seem kind of flat. They look kind of hand painted, which is a cool look, but they seem kind of flat and one dimensional to me, and they kind of get recycled, and I feel like the color palette isn't really that broad.
So is it are you now talking a bit more about the background, what you see on the background, or like the level assets themselves?
Yeah, I'm talking more like the foreground elements.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
There's parallax scrolling going on, so there are different layers of background and foreground. But I just feel like they just need to pop more. I feel like they need to have more bold lines, I think, especially when you look at the characters and how bold the characters are. Mm-hmm. The characters stand out, and the backgrounds kind of fades away, and it feels really one-dimensional. It feels really flat to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree completely with the idea that the characters' silhouettes stand out. I, for one, I can't really tell much of the difference between the normal melee enemy and the normal ranged enemy. Besides, the ranged enemy is slightly more bulky, but if everything was black, you wouldn't be able to tell much of a difference. Yeah, further on from that, I think another reason that Chad is the art style isn't really popping for Chad is just the color palette's all very samey. There's not much tonal differentiation amongst the colors, and especially like from level to level. Each level has its own feel and color palette, but like all of level 2 is very blue, I would say, and all of level 1 is very like red and brown. Same with level 3, level 1 to 3.
Yeah, I agree. I do like the color palettes they used, but I think they should have used more and mixed it up a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And like Chad said, I like the lighting effects they did as well. I think those were really cool.
Talking about the level design, like more like the technical kind of part, how did you guys experience some of the levels?
It's hard to tell because, in my opinion, there's not too much of a story. I mean, there is, the demons are raising up and you're trying to stop them, but there isn't really a story leading into the level necessarily, no cutscenes or anything. And then you get in there and there's like, the levels are super long with nothing much to do. They do have some areas that you branch off to go find, I guess they're runes or collectibles, if you would, but then you basically backtrack, and they're not that hard to find either. But the levels are pretty much straightforward. It's a 2D side-scrolling, so I mean, most of those games don't have too many variations anyway, this type of style, but I do feel like they need more. More needs to be added to that to make it to keep the players playing, keep them coming back, I guess.
Yeah, so like objective-wise,
yeah,
like they could have put more.
There's no real objective.
Yeah.
Except for to get to the end of the level.
Okay, but I've also seen like very, very bite-sized puzzles kind of to continue the level. Are there more things like that? Like that you need to like complete something or do something in order to continue the level?
So far, there's nothing like that. The only real puzzle they have is in, I think it's level 2, but basically it's an attic, and it's kind of glitchy. These stairs come down, and sometimes the stairs won't come down. Sometimes they'll come down, and then they'll go back up like they're supposed to when you get up there. And not to give too much away, but then they'll drop before you can even, before you complete what you're supposed to do up there. They'll come back down, or you can even jump through the stairs at some points. But that's really it, and it's not really to get to the end of the level. It's just another one of those secret areas that you get a secret item.
Oh, right. Okay.
There's, as far as I can tell, there are only 2 puzzles in the entire game, and only one of them is mandatory. So there's
in level 3.
There's the puzzle in the second level that Tim's talking about, which is totally optional, and then in the third level you have to solve a puzzle to make progress. But it's calling it a puzzle is kind of being generous.
That's probably why I don't remember it.
So what I'm hearing is that levels are a bit long, kind of too long, and
yes, they need to at least be half the length. What they're trying to keep up in pacing with like a AAA game like DMC, but the reason that those games can pull off being so long is because that they do have a 3D environment, and they're cut up in a way such as each area is its own, not only puzzle but exploration area. There's no exploration in the flat 2D plane, and that's why it seems extra long for us. Also the fact that there's not enough checkpoints, which makes it seem even longer.
Yeah, going on the checkpoints, right now the game is really glitchy and crashes quite a bit, especially if you go into Bushido focus. But because it crashes like that and there's no save points, no way to continue, you have to start from either at the beginning of the level or sometimes even from the level before, and that can cause problems.
Yeah, so to be clear, if the game doesn't crash, when you hit a checkpoint, when you die, you will go back to that checkpoint, but if the game crashes, it does not save that checkpoint progress, and you have to start the level over again.
Yeah.
Yes. There's no way to actually save and exit the game mid-level.
Right.
Yeah, we're pretty clear about the levels, so missing objectives and it's too long and checkpoints.
Yeah, I mean,
if they are going to have it that long, have some checkpoint.
Mm-hmm.
The length wouldn't be a problem if there were more things to do. If there were things to break, if there was exploration, if there was more hidden items that were more out of the way. It's just that the levels are very, very linear, so.
The artist who did the animation is Tom Matthews, and he actually did it in Software Spine. So guys, did you kind of notice with the animation things look pretty smooth or maybe not as smooth? How's the overall animation?
I'd say the animation is serviceable. It does what it needs to do. It contributes to one of the game's biggest problems, is that it just lacks impact in general. But from the animation side specifically, the character animation is mostly good, although sometimes it just doesn't feel very organic. It feels as if the character is almost like a paper pin-up with its limbs still stuck together through pins, which actually could work if the entire aesthetic was based around that. But further on from that, another thing that adds on to the character design of the enemies is the enemies all have extremely similar animation. Even the larger enemy has the same attack animation, it would seem, as the smaller enemies, and so on and so forth. And they all have a very similar walk animation on top of that. And that just contributes to the whole idea that their silhouette and like their look and feel is very different. Perhaps like later in the game they should have an entirely different type of enemy, like a different kind of species or something, each with its own different walk, and that would actually help them a lot. and when it comes to variants, depending on how long they want the entire game to be. But yeah, apart from that, yeah, like I said, serviceable, lacks impact, but is very derivative of stuff like Ninja Gaiden, Devil May Cry, many of these things. It's like a great example of something that perhaps developers should look at is Dust and Elysian Tale. That's also a 2D game. That's a 2D brawler, but its combat and its the animation as well as the art style is just unparalleled. What do you guys think?
That's a good call out there. That's a fantastic game. Not one I've finished, but yeah, really smooth, really fluid, really great feeling combat. I think Phil touched on like all of the things that all the complaints that I have. I mean, I think in a game like this where it is so focused on the combat, like everything has to feel good, everything has to feel polished. That should be job one, in my opinion. That needs to be solid before you start, making the levels look fancier, adding more levels in, whatever. The combat just needs to feel really, really good, really, really smooth. And it just doesn't. When your character gets hit, there's a little bit of a knockback and a little bit of an effect, but it's not anything noticeable. It's tough to tell when you've been damaged. It's tough to tell how much damage you're doing to the enemies. It just doesn't feel like your attacks have a lot of impact, aside from using the giant club, which is a lot of fun to knock enemies around the screen with.
Yeah, I agree. I do like the fighting. I like the animation style, like how they have it, but like Chad said, it's not really polished. The collision detection isn't really there either, because sometimes when I was playing, I'd hit an enemy, and my weapon would go right through him, and he wouldn't get any damage. Or one of the moves is where you, I don't know what it is. You shoot something out of your weapon, and it's really overpowered. First of all, but sometimes it won't even hit the enemy. It'll just go right through them, and yeah. So I agree. It definitely need to be polished.
Yeah. Adding on to that, I think what you kind of more noticing there is sometimes your attacks will interrupt an enemy's attack, sometimes they won't. I'm not sure if it's just specific attacks, but yeah, I could see what you mean. I think they're still getting hit, you're just not noticing it because they're still going through with their animation and they hit you, and it's as if you didn't hit them, like they didn't feel it.
That is possible, I guess.
We're moving on to the next topics because we're pretty much already flowing into those. Gameplay, mechanics, combat. Let's start first with the mechanics of the game. What do you guys think about the mechanics of the game? Is it doing something new?
I really don't. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I don't think it's adding too much as it is iterating onto the idea. Again, 2D Devil May Cry. The combat is the core mechanic. It's pretty good if lacking impact. I think they should do some initial testing on just seeing how it is with the enemies had like half the health they have now, because at the point it is at the moment, it'll take like 2 basic combos to take down a basic enemy, and that seems like way too much. It seems if you want to, most of these games try to go for is, you are a superpowered badass, but like you don't feel like that when the enemies are taking 2 full hits to kill. If they have planning to have a progression system, which they haven't mentioned, but if they did, then you could increase your damage, that'd fix that. But the current base damage, I think, is too low.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues is the game lacks focus in a lot of ways. Like they've tried to just throw in all these elements from other games, and it just feels like these things are in there just to check off the list of like, yep, we have a grappling thing to jump across chasms, and yep, there's like a little station to spend your souls to buy new abilities, but there's only like a couple of them in the game in really weird places. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, there's progression, but there's only moves for one of the weapons that you can buy, pretty much. And like, I don't know, it's just like, yes, I understand it's in development, it's an alpha thing, but it's like, if they're aiming for a late summer release, like, they have a lot of stuff to throw in before they get to that point. I also just felt like some stuff just doesn't feel good. Like, the grappling didn't feel good. It was a weird combination of buttons that didn't really ever work. The Bushido focus, which is supposed to be like one of your key abilities, I could never get to work. It just crashed the game every time I pushed the button. So if you're getting really frustrated with the fight you're in, you can always just crash the game by hitting left bumper.
Every time.
Every single time.
I've actually seen Phillip using that. Like in one of the gameplay footage.
I think it used to work before they patched it.
Yeah, you can use it. That being said, I don't think you can use it in the second level. I know for a fact it breaks at several points in the second level, but when I used it, I was mainly using it in like the combat arenas, which is their challenge area, just to, see how badly I could break it. Which someone broke it twice as well as I did, because their high score was 300 and the developer high score was 56, and mine was 100. Mine was 144. But man, that 300 would have taken ages.
Are you scored just by the number of enemies you kill? Is that?
Yeah, it's the idea that when you kill an enemy, you increase your time by a couple seconds.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, basic idea is you keep using that ridiculously overpowered projectile ability, but it gets ridiculous to the point where like they're a constant one of those big things like jumping out at you, like every second. So you have to stay in the air to keep alive. But yeah.
Oh, what did you guys think about those teleporting enemies? Those were like the most annoying things ever.
Yeah.
That's not a good idea. They need to either make a bigger window to deal with them, or I don't know. But see, that'd be okay if there was a counter ability, but there's no counter ability in this game.
The only way I was able to actually fight them was to use the same weapon they were using and just keep on attacking. Just like on the ground, just spamming the one button over and over again, and trying to aim my character in the direction that they were going to be when they landed. And I killed them that way, but it took forever. And that was the only way I could do it.
Yeah, the collision detection's really broken on them. It felt like I just jumped up in the air and did the spear attack like over and over again.
Yeah, what I did was I used that same projectile ability as I do with everything, and basically you can see that their health bar spawns before they do, so you know where they're about to come out. So I just aim and fire in that direction, and that usually gets them.
I tried that and I never hit them once with it. That's why I had to do the same weapon they had.
Yeah, talking a bit about the weapons now that how many different weapons are there in the game?
So there's the sword, there's the
there's four technically.
Naginata, there's the giant club, and then there's like these really quick claws, like,
which I don't remember what they're called, but yeah, that's what I was using on those guys.
Now that you're talking about the different enemy types, there's not like a certain weapon type where you can say like this is the best to use on that enemy type, or you don't really have that.
There, I think there is some of that. Like I found for the big guys with blades for arms, I could just hit them with the club over and over again, and it would just stun lock them basically.
Yeah,
okay.
That's what I figured out first, and then I also learned the ridiculously overpowered projectile attack. And
that's how I would.
To everything.
That's how I dealt with them.
Yeah, that projectile attack's crazy. You just like hover in midair for minutes. It feels like.
What about switching between them?
There's like I don't think there's any way of seamlessly switching between them to extend combos, which is really important in these games. Like, so
I would think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that mechanic's in there.
I was able to not smoothly, I would say, but I was able to do a combo on the ground with one weapon and then knock them up with that same weapon and then switch to another weapon and do some air combos. And so, I mean, that kind of kept the But yeah, smoothly, no. I would say there's no way to do it.
It waits for the animation to finish. So like you're locked into the animation, and so you can't smoothly switch. Like I definitely was switching between them a lot, but yeah, there's nothing smooth about it.
No, it's not smooth at all.
Another strange problem that the game has is, I swear to God, the more fancy the attack is, the less effective it is. Like when I first started playing, there's that attack where you attack twice with the samurai sword, then hold on for a minute, then keep attacking, and you teleport in you become invisible and slash everywhere. It's a really cool move, but there's no way to aim it, and I don't think it aims the enemies or something, so it just doesn't hit anything. And it's just like, oh. And the fact you can also get hit while doing that is ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
It's like, I'm like, wait, what? I didn't even know where I was. How did they know where I was?
Anything to add on the overall gameplay?
I'll add a little bit of something. I don't know if it has to do with gameplay. A little bit, I guess. But I meant to mention earlier that I had a problem with the weapons, too, or how you find the weapons. This was kind of a big problem for me. But that's just because I'm used to games that have a little bit more, I don't know, structure, I guess, to them because of 3D games and stuff. But you kind of just find weapons randomly. They're not randomly. They're in that same place every time. But it just feels like they're just randomly thrown someplace. Instead of, like, in the third level, I don't know if it's in the patch or not. I can't remember. But you could find, or you find the claw weapons on a dead body. And I think that's good. That's how they should have the other weapons. Not necessarily find them on a dead body, but maybe kill an enemy and get a weapon or, something like that. Not just randomly thrown out there.
Yeah, perhaps they should make it that you get a new weapon when you kill a boss or something like that. That's how most games do it.
Yeah, that's a good...
Yeah, that could be a good one.
In a lot of games, too, like when you pick up a new weapon, they actually give you an opportunity to use it right away, so you sort of understand what situations it works best in. That I think would go a long way in this game. Like if they gave you the club and then they give you an enemy that it worked better against, so you sort of like, oh, okay, in this situation I can use it for this. That would go a long way to make it feel a little more purposeful. Like, and be excited about picking up these new weapons.
Okay, so before I continue with the next question, anything else to add, like to gameplay, mechanics, or combat?
Then this isn't really gameplay or combat related, but it's just something I wanted to quickly touch on. You said this is an Irish developer, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I found it kind of odd that they decided to go with a Japanese setting, because if they went with something from like, I don't know, Irish mythology, if something like that, or from history, like that's like free press, because the gaming press and the gaming audience in general loves when people try new settings, and like that's just something that hasn't really been done before, kind of like an olden time Irish or Irish mythology setting. But yeah, I felt as if it was a missed opportunity to go with something that we quite frankly see a lot.
Well, you never know what their next game is.
Yeah.
Maybe you just gave them an idea.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good idea, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I'd play it.
I guess you already mentioned that there's not a lot of story in it, but do you feel like that you are missing something like that? Like maybe if you're playing through the level, or if you are encountering any of the enemies?
Yeah, there are a few places where some story would be nice. There's a set piece fight that's actually kind of a cool idea in this room with a big bell, and you're fighting a bunch of guys, and then the bell like falls down and crashes through the floor. So it would be cool to like know, like, what is this temple, like, mean anything? Does this have something to do with the story? That it would be nice to know that. And then there's another spot where you defend this daimyo, and there's nothing story related there, at least not yet. So it'd be nice to know.
I think the implied story there is something along the lines of, we've been attacked. Oh, I've destroyed the big monster that was attacking my village. Crap! Now I need to go save the daimyo, and then you go save the daimyo.
Yeah.
And then that's where it stops, because we don't know what happens after level 3.
Yeah, I think we'll learn more once they add more, and maybe they even have, a cutscene or so that they're adding to the beginning, even if it's just like a storyboard cutscene. You know what I mean? Where there's no animation, it's just, well, slight animation, but no real animation. But even that would work. So maybe they are planning on adding something like that.
How do you guys think about the music in the game? Like, what kind of music is it?
It's serviceable, is what I would explain it as.
I like it. I like I think it serves well within the levels, but especially in the first level, the song kind of repeats a lot, and where levels are so long, it kind of gets lost in the background, and you kind of just want to not hear it anymore. But they do mold well with the level.
I found the audio in general to be pretty annoying.
Really?
Yeah. All the music loops pretty quickly. The second and third levels, it's not really a big problem, but the song in the first level drove me completely crazy because the loop is, I don't know, 10 seconds maybe. I'm not sure what it is, but I think you could loop that song in 10 seconds. The sound design in general, like, is... I personally don't think it's that good. The enemies make weird, like, dog sounds when you kill them. At least that was what I got. It was like dogs whining, kind of, like when you kill the enemies, which is really, really weird to me.
Do they have their own sounds? Like,
no.
Every enemy type?
Doesn't seem like it. I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
Didn't sound like it to me, but I guess I wasn't paying attention that much to the sound of the enemies.
Yeah, I completely agree with Chad, like, in general. Adding on to the lack of impact, which is the game's biggest problem, the sound design is another big part of that. Like, even when you hit enemies, there's no real oomph to it. Like, you can attack, you're hitting something with a samurai sword, but it kind of just sounds like you're scraping it off them. So that's something they could quite easily fix, and it'd really benefit the game. They just need to put a bit more effort into it, maybe put a bit more of the dollars into it, and it would help them vast amount.
We've pretty much covered a lot of topics, so let's go back to what did you guys what would you say is the most positive thing about the game? What do you guys think is the most positive?
Personally, I think the art is actually fairly strong. I think if the levels were just gone over again, maybe a little bit more bold detail visually, I think the levels could actually look pretty good. I think the characters, again, they actually do have a lot of detail, but they're too similar in design and color. If the enemies could be differentiated a little bit more, be given unique personalities, unique animations, again, sound to differentiate them, that would go a long way too. But yeah, I think visually the game looks pretty decent, and you look at some of the screenshots from it. I mean, there's some really cool visuals in it, and some cool settings. There's definitely some good ideas in there. So I personally think the art is actually the visual stuff is actually the strongest, some of the strongest stuff in the game.
Yeah, for me personally, I feel as if the strongest point is definitely the concept. It's a very strong concept, and it's just the implementation that needs work. But, you know, as 2D Devil May Cry or 2D Ninja Gaiden, as I've said before, just those words, just saying it that way would get many of my friends very excited to play a game like that. So it's a good selling point. It's a good concept.
Yeah, and I agree with Chad. I agree with both of you guys actually, but I think the art and it's beautifully drawn in my opinion.
Most positive that I'm hearing, art and the concept, but what's the most negative part?
Implementation of the combat.
I would say game breaking bugs. the level checkpoints not saving, that progress not being saved, and a lot of checkpoints are in strange places. But yeah, just the game crashing and progress being lost.
Yeah, you kind of made me change mine, but I'm going to add to it too with the game-breaking bugs. I mean, that's a big thing. I think they should fix that and then work on the combat. But I also feel like if with the saving and the checkpoints in between, if they don't want to add more save points, maybe add something in between each level, that more objectives or something to make it a little bit more fun.
I did actually want to add one more thing that I liked that was a little detail, but I'm playing with a Xbox 360 controller on my PC. I don't know what you guys used.
360.
Yes.
But there is actually some rumble stuff in there. So like when the first boss is walking through the background of the first level, with every step the controller rumbles, which I thought was a nice little touch that not a lot of people necessarily going to notice, but it was a nice little touch. But I also feel like they could have used that a lot more, and they.
Final last question. Does this game look promising? If you have your doubts, what would you maybe change to make it promising?
I think it's promising. They need to fix on those bugs though, because they should not release it with the bugs that they have right now.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say it is promising, and it just needs a little bit more polish.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree. Concept great. So all they need is take an extra few months if they really need to. No one's really gonna be too up in arms about it. They'll probably be happy. Fix the bugs. Try fix the combat implementation along with the sound design, and get some weight behind that. And maybe fix the game pacing, and then you're golden.
I would say just a little more differentiation. Every time you fight enemies, those two tentacles go up, it locks you into one place, and you fight the same enemies over and over again. If you just added some platforms in there, threw in a few different more enemy types, made the combat feel really good, make switching between the weapons feel really good, and let you switch mid combo, I'd be pretty interested to play it. If you're gonna do a side-scrolling game, you really have to differentiate yourself, because there are thousands of them out there. So if they could just make that combat feel really good, make where you're fighting feel really good, I mean that might be something. It'd be something I'd be interested in.
All right, guys, thank you for all your great feedback. And for those who are interested in this game, you can check out Onikira Demon Killer on Steam. It's in early access, and they're aiming to release the game starting July. For all of us here at AlphaFeed, this is Rai, signing off. Thank you for watching and listening.